So in 2014, a group called Students for Fair Admission sued Harvard for discrimination against Asians. And people were like, why would they do that? The reason why they do that is because Harvard has this diversity rationale, a DEI rationale. They say we need more diverse applicants, and they just happen to label Asians as not diverse. So we know what they mean by diverse student body. They want more Black and Hispanic students. They don't want more Asian students. And
so the Asians perform too well. I'm just gonna jump in here.
Yeah, no, and what we learned in the process of the discovery of the case is that an Asian in the highest academic, the highest 10% of all Harvard admissions, academically, has a lower chance to get in than a Black person in the fourth lowest decile of admissions at Harvard. So there are standards. An Asian has to score about 273 points higher on the SAT to have the same chance of admission as a Black person, about 120 points higher to have the same chance of admission as a white person. So that's based on the discovery data that we learned. It is different standards, and it is discrimination.
What is the judge saying?
So in 2019, so Harvard presents this competing case. Their case is that the Asians are not discriminated against if you include a thing called a personality score. When you apply to Harvard, you're judged on three things: academics, extracurriculars, and a personality score. Asians score the highest academics, highest in extracurriculars, and then they score the lowest out of all of the races on the personality score. And this was used as evidence in the trial that Harvard wasn't discriminating. But what Students for Fair Admissions, my organization, has been arguing, and I think successfully, is that the personality score is just a proxy for Harvard's discrimination. They will look at an essay written by a guy with a last name Wong or Shu, and they will say, you know, this student, he's good, but he's not amazing. And they will look at a student whose last name is like Hernandez or something, and they would say, this student is amazing, we have to take him. You know, and we actually had an economist break down the applications, application by application, and the economist, whose name is Peter Arcidiacono, you can read about him, says after reading those applications, he sees the unfair standards that were given. He could read the exact same application, the only thing changed is a person's name and race, and Harvard would label one standard strong, which is SS, which is like good but not good enough, and they would label the other, this is amazing, we have to take him.
Fascinating, with the only other determinant being race, presumably. Is that?
And what would a Harvard admissions officer grade a personality on? It could be things like maybe a teacher recommendation, alumni recommendation, the strength of your personal essay. But what we found was that the Asians actually score highest on alumni recommendations, and they score highest out of all the races on teacher recommendations, and they score second highest out of all the races on counselor recommendations. Big whooping deal. There's no objective metric that you can link to the personality score except for race.
Fascinating, and again disturbing. So you're confident you're going to win this one?
You can never be too confident. But I will even say that even who people call a swing justice, Chief Justice John Roberts, who defended Obamacare and other things, he has made public his disdain for affirmative action. He has made public. He said in a 2005 decision when he was a dissenter, the only way to stop discrimination on the basis of race is to stop discrimination on the basis of race. Now, I will say in 2014, we had a similar affirmative action case, Fisher versus University of Texas, that we thought was going to go our way too, but ended up going the other way. But this, we're even more confident because Ketanji Brown Jackson actually recused herself, and she's most likely to be sympathetic to Harvard's viewpoint, but she was on the Harvard Board of Overseers. So that was a question asked during her Supreme Court hearing, and she did say, I will recuse myself, and she did recuse herself.
Before we talk about your book, School of Woke, which I'm very interested in learning more about, In fact, I've just been reading James Lindsay's new book, The Marxification of Education, which is, again, fascinating, but also it's kind of helping me understand a lot of what's happened in the academy. Before we go there, I want to talk about this, academic scandal at Thomas Jefferson High School, which, of course, you know a lot about. So tell me.
Well, I wrote the first chapter of my previous book, An Inconvenient Minority, was all about Thomas Jefferson High School. And what I discovered at Thomas Jefferson High School was that the progressive school board, which is controlled by progressives, Thomas Jefferson High School is the #1 math and science high school in the nation. And recently, the school got about 70% Asian. It used to be 70% white, now it's 70% Asian. Why? Because the Asians were just studying harder. They were getting the top math scores in the nation. So yes, they were going to Thomas Jefferson. And the progressive school board got mad about that. So what happened? Well, George Floyd happened. And they brought in Ibram X. Kendi, an author, a critical race theory author, the author of How to Be Anti-Racist, speak about how standardized tests are racist. So they got rid of that whole admissions process. They made it a holistic lottery admissions process, which is now being sued, right? There's actually a lawsuit against that right now. But even more recently, because of this admissions process, what it has created was they started admitting kids who were just not qualified. This is the #1 math and science high school. These kids are going to be nuclear engineers. But if 30% of the kids who are admitted are now not qualified, it creates a great imbalance in the school's makeup. And they decided to rectify this imbalance, not by rectifying their admissions process, but by withholding awards from the actual high-performing students, because they wanted to make the low-performing students feel better. So that's what happened at Thomas Jefferson School. It is a consequence of the racial preferences that they were already doing. They admitted lower qualified students, and now, because they admitted lower qualified students, they wanted to make these students feel better, so they stopped doing the awards for the higher qualified students, who, by the way, were almost entirely Asian. So they were withholding these National Merit Scholarship Awards from well-qualified Asians who could have used those scholarship awards to apply for colleges for the sake of appeasing the feelings of those at the lower end of the spectrum.